Oh, we got somebody. We got Corey Fowler. Corey, how's it going? How are you? Who else? We've got only me and you so far, Corey. Let's see if anybody else hops in today. You know, you're minimizing a stream's amount of popularity by talking about Marx's value form theory or something, and then you put it in on a Patreon only live stream, and there'll be like 2 people in the world watching. You're sick with COVID, like seriously sick. You're not bullshitting me here now. Actually sick with COVID. Maybe you're immune. Maybe he's immune. Man, Trump is on just this year, just the political absurdity, just it knows no bounds. I've never seen anything like it. That doesn't sound too good. Are you in America, Corey? Yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's just fucking, things just get worse and worse and worse and worse. It's hard to believe, like, Donald Trump is just, he's out of his mind. I don't know. I was watching him today, and this morning when I got up, and he was outside the White House or something doing a press conference, and kind of a speech thing. And he looks, I think he looks like he's had a slight stroke. I said that to my missus, and something around his bottom of his his lower teeth. They're not as crooked as mine. That's got to be said. It wouldn't be hard, but he's got there's something about his speech that to me seems slightly off, like on certain letters or words that I think he's probably had a stroke. And I think there's a high rate of strokes among COVID patients, so I really wouldn't be surprised at all if he's had one. He's probably going to get more. He's probably going to get worse. Maybe he has those new wonder drugs, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be any. I don't know if they'll do him any good at all. Let me see here now. Corey, do you want to ask me somebody else asked me a couple of things to talk about beforehand, but I might wait till they hop on. So do you have anything you'd like to ask or chat about? I actually today as well, I bought my first car. I'm 40. What age am I? I'm 43. It's the first time I've ever bought a car today. I bought an old banger, like a 13-year-old Ford Fiesta. And I enjoyed, I must say, I only got my driver's license this year, and I enjoyed being on holidays in Ireland, driving around, going off to a few like remote islands off in the west coast and camping and stuff. But I bought it. I was out in like east in Essex today in London, like kind of, the suburbs of East London, and off a motorway somewhere to walk along to buy this car, and around all these places where there's just like people just driving their cars everywhere and sitting on their own looking glum. And I must say, I didn't get any buzz from buying this car at all. I got like a very deep sense of kind of a deep malaise. It was kind of all encompassing. Like, I seem to have managed to avoid buying anything, like becoming. I've never bought a house. My missus has bought a house. I've never bought a house. I've never had a car. I think it was the most money I ever spent on a single item in my life. And I kind of, it sounds kind of pretentious, and it's not like something I've ever really thought about. But after I bought the car, I felt like, I've managed to get this far without a car, and I've kind of succumbed. when I look around all these cars driving around, like, it's easy to kind of be tricked by combustion engines. Combustion engines, they're in a controlled environment in a bonnet, right? And they have a little exhaust at the back, and it just trickles out a bit of smoke. But like in reality, your car is like somebody essentially burning a lump of coal in a fire, and there's people just driving around in mobile fires. That's what they are. They're mobile fires just burning the face of the planet. And so there's like millions of them all over the place. You see them on the street. Oh, it's a car. But really inside it, there's a fire burning, and this smog is coming out the back pipe. So I feel like I've become one of these people now who just like has an extra fire device. So that's kind of depressing. Yeah. So even though I've never had one, I feel like I'm fully in the rat race now. Left podcaster with a car. That's fucking it. It's over for me now. Well, I put together. Somebody asked me in the Patreon. Let's have a go. Sure, I'll keep going. I think we only have 2 here today, so this could be a very fucking short one. I don't know if we don't get some stuff to talk about. But I got. Oh, let me share the screen here. So the comments that people asked me to talk about. So we had one from Nathan P, who wants to keep it on the nerdy. So he says, ask you about your comment on the Discord about how values do not equals prices, the problems with Shake in this regard, and the value form, and if this, as Matic Jr. argues, causes problems when Marxist tries to measure the rate of profit. Okay, so there's quite. Yeah. Corey says it's impossible not to drive in America. Yeah, like unless you're living in I've lived in Dublin and I've lived in London. They're the 2 places I really lived since I was about 17. And, I lived in the city centre usually, or close enough in Dublin. I had a bike, you could get around. And in London, I had a bike and the tube and all that. So, that's one thing to say. Like Dublin was really badly served. It didn't really have any trains or no underground. Still doesn't have any underground. But at least it was small enough, and it had buses and a few trains, but not very many. But London is really good for the transport. But it really is. So you can easily live. Like my ideal thing would be to be able to just rent a car when I needed it to do a particular thing. But you join one of those zip car clubs or something. But because I only have a new license, you have to have a license for 2 years or something to be able to join them. So you kind of, if you want to practice your driving and stuff once you get your license and be able to drive around, you do actually have to buy a car. So American cities are outside of, I think outside of probably New York and maybe Chicago's supposed to be reasonably good. Maybe some of them, but a lot of them are just really pathetic. Served without the car. So let's talk about this. This is so values equals prices. So this is Anwar Shaikh. He's a kind of a. I think he would have called himself a Marxist at some stage, but now I think he calls himself a post or a neo-Ricardian. So what the hell does that mean? So as far as I understand it, they have done some statistical research using the data from the, is it the Euro? Let me see what it's where they're from, what exact department they're actually from. It is from the U.S. national income and product accounts. So the NIPA accounts, right? And so, 1 second. Nathan, how's it going? Nathan's here. So Nathan, I've just started I've just started talking about the question you asked. So Sheikh calls himself, I think, calls himself nowadays a neo-Ricardian. So this is kind of comes out of some statistical research that has been done in America and from the national accounts. And so what they've tested is, which is not even Marx's theory, if we think in it, because Marx doesn't think that values and prices are the same thing. Okay. The value is the amount of socially necessary labor time in a product, and the price is whatever it sells at. So you've got things like supply and demand that push things out, but assume even like that supply and demand are in perfect order. In the real world, you have things like monopolies. Yeah. Like, so you have, so Nathan says, I think he calls himself a classical political economist. Yeah. So I think I've actually heard him say neo-Ricardian, but I could be wrong on that. Like, I definitely could be wrong on that. But so Marx doesn't think that value equals price. The reason why, if you think about it, like very simply, like look at the price of oil. Okay. One day a barrel of oil can be worth like, this year a barrel of West Texas crude was worth at one stage like negative, I think it was negative $5. Yeah. So, and then 2 months before that, okay, it's worth $60. And, back in 2008, oil was up to like, I think at one stage, $140 a barrel. Okay. Now, that's one of the biggest industries in the entire world, right? And during that time, the amount of labor required to produce a barrel of oil has remained, reasonably static. It's probably, with peak oil, it'll be going up. There's more labor involved in getting stuff out of the ground. Yeah. So in any one day, like speculation can cause, not just speculation, but because countries who have their hands on oil, they get a monopoly price. So the price of the oil barrel is way over its cost of production. Yeah. Maybe shale oil and these are closer to what the labor and the cost is, but cheap oil coming out of Saudi Arabia, the price it gets is they get the same price, right, as the dear barrel of shale oil. So whatever the marginal barrel is, whatever the most expensive barrel to produce is, all the rest of them essentially get the same price. So there's a massive redistribution of wealth going on. There's a monopoly price being given to, like, say, the Saudi princes, and they're siphoning productive value from the rest of the world. And this stuff goes on in all over the place. Banks siphon off interest. Landlords siphon off rent. Okay, so there's massive industries that are siphoning value from all over the place. So if we look at industries, the values and the prices, we shouldn't expect them to be particularly correlated. There should be like systemic deviations. Okay, so that's one kind of just a very basic idea to have in our heads, that value can't equal price. Right, the biggest commodity traded in the world is oil, and value never equals price there, never even close to it. Okay, so like that should, IT service, or like loads of IT things, finance stuff, like, there's loads of sectors that basically don't create value. They're just getting monopoly. They're siphoning value off other things. Okay, so remember that all these ones that are siphoning value, that'll bring down the prices of other things and arbitrarily bring up the prices for other things above, like what if we were to give them a value way above their value. Okay, and it's systemically, it's not just a supply and demand thing. So there would be great dislocations. Okay, so then we get to this problem. So I've done a little graph here for you today, Nathan. So tell me, just fire me some questions if I'm going too fast or if I'm misleading anybody. So I just did up a simple little idea. So this is where they're getting their their statistical measures from. Let's have a look at this. So in the NIPA accounts, or NIPA accounts, the national income and what's the second part? National income and product accounts. Okay, they are aggregating the data. Okay, so the data they're giving to the economists to have a look around in, they're not listing every individual's firm's costs, like capital, constant capital costs, variable capital costs, and the price of their output. Okay, what they're doing is they are adding up all of the companies that are in a certain industrial sector, and they are giving you aggregates. Okay, so they might say the aggregate for constant capital in the, I've done one here, the current sector for a very basic current sector. They might say the total capital, constant capital in the current sector is 300. The variable capital is 300. So that's 600 invested in your capital in that sector, and your surplus value is 300. So it's 100% rate of exploitation. So you're paying the workers half the value they create, and your total value is 900. Okay, so that's at the level of what they're showing us. Okay, so what let's have a look at what is totally wrong with the statistical correlation that they're getting from this. Okay, now in this imaginary three firm sector, okay, we've got a corn farmer, we've got our corn wholesalers, and we've got our cornflake factory. Okay, so we have our farmers out in the field. We've got some business who buys all the corn from the farmers, stores it, warehouses, or whatever, and then we have a cornflake factory, and they sell it onto this cornflake factory, and they produce cornflakes. Right? This is our very simple model here. Okay, let's have a look. So our corn farmers here, look, they have. So let's have a look at this one here. So they have a very small constant capital of 20, and they have a very large variable capital. So the farmer has maybe a tractor and some land, but then he puts in loads of labor. Okay, whether these are believable or not, it's just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so if you were to look at that, you would think, so that farm, because it's 100% rate of exploitation, the total value of its output is the constant and the variable and the surplus. So it's 20 and 180 is 200, and then the surplus is 180, and that gives us 380. Okay, that'll be the value. Okay, so let's have a look down here. We see here that the corn, this is the constant and variable capital ratios. We see that the corn farmers has only a tiny bit of machinery. The wholesalers maybe has, a lot of trucks to get stuff here and there from all the farmers. They might have a lot of warehousing or stuff like that. Okay, so they have maybe 50-50 ratio between their variable and constant capital. And the cornflake factory is massive machines with very few workers. So we got the farmer has got loads of fellas picking corn, all variable capital, maybe a couple of tractors. We got the wholesalers, you've got a lot of labor maybe, and also a lot of machinery. And then finally you got the cornflake factory, who's got tiny number of workers and a huge big factory. Okay, now if we were to sum all them up and we were look at a so let's look at this graph here. So here, so Marx has this idea of the prices of production. Okay, so the prices of production is the average number of, it's the average profit. So Marx's idea is the tendency for capital to move into areas that are highly profitable, increase competition, and bring down the rate of profit to the average rate of profit. Okay, so let's just assume that everybody gets paid the exact average rate of profit. Okay, so instead of the farmers getting what we have here of 380 quid, $380 or something for their output, because they've got loads of variable capital and small constant capital, they're producing lots of value, but they're not going to get their average. They're not going to get the actual value. They'll get the average value. So they're going to get £300 instead of 380. Okay, so this is this graph here. The cornflake factory, because he has exactly, he has the average. He's going to get the total value will be the same as the price of production. And the cornflake. Sorry, I got these are the wrong. These are the wrong. Let me just edit them. They're the wrong. The labels are in the wrong place. Chart and axis titles. Oh, fucking hell. Chart style. How do I do this? Legend. Horizontal axis. Setup. Data range. Okay. These are wrong. Okay, so this one should be farmers. This one should be, I don't know what has gone wrong there. Let me see. Edit the chart. Okay, that's it there. Okay, sorry. 1 second here. Okay. Sorry about this. Okay, here we go. So here we have, this is the total value output of corn farmers. So they're getting below them. So for the corn farmer, when he sells it, he's not getting the value, he's getting the price. And because he only gets the average amount of profit, average surplus amount. So he's going to get less. The corn wholesaler, he's getting exactly, say, whatever the value. And the cornflake factory is getting more profit than him. So we see here that if we take this is the value is blue column and the price here is red. We're just assuming that it's going to go straight to price of production. In real life, it'll be, it won't be exactly price of production. It will have there'll be a tendency to go towards that. We see all of them except for corn, who just happens to have the perfect ratio. So the cornflake factory is getting a higher price than the value of his work, and the corn farmer is getting less price than the value of his work. But look what happens over here in this fourth one when we look at the whole sector together. Okay, when we look at this corn sector together, what happens? Well, it's adding the prices and the values of these together, and we're going to end up with prices and values looking to be correlated, even when they're not. We see on the individual, the farmer doesn't sell his thing at the price, at the value of the price. The cornflake guy is not getting the value of his output. He's getting a higher price. So what we're seeing here is that you can get a correlation when you sum over many different elements within a sector that will give you a misleading correlation. Now, this is one of the major problems with it. Okay, so is this a reasonable situation? Like what I'm saying here, is this reasonable? Okay, is my example here going to be reasonable? Let's think of what happens when you look at a sector. You could say, oh well, let's look at the food sector. Oh, well, that's what we've done here. Look at automotive or look at whatever, all these different sectors. But within those sectors, you will have, very different organic compositions of capital. And, more than likely, the tendency of the law of large numbers will lead you to have a normally distributed organic composition of capital. Like it's hard to think of any sector in the real world where there isn't labor heavy parts and non-labor heavy parts in it. Okay, so I think this is like likely to explain. And this is not the only problem, but this is, I think, the one that's very understandable for people. That like when you aggregate, you end up with big problems. So what would you need? I think a very good thing to ask would be, what would you need to actually measure if values were prices? Okay. Now, David Ricardo used to think that value and price, that the amount of labor, the value that determined the price. Okay, and this is why Sheikh and people like that consider themselves like classical economists or neo-Ricardians or post-Ricardians or something like that. Is that they look at this empirical evidence and say, but look, values are prices, so Ricardo was correct and Marx was wrong. Okay, but really what they're doing is they're interpreting the data that they're using incorrectly. Now, what would you need to be able to show that, that they were correct? Actually, value and prices are the same thing, essentially. With noise, they're essentially, they explain each other. So what you would need would be for the data that the national income and I keep forgetting the name, national income and product accounts were producing. What the data we would want from them would be not to aggregate it like this, but to disaggregate it on a firm basis. So you would have the amount of labor each individual firm has, their costs, their capital costs, their labor costs, the price they got it, and then you could see if the output matched. So for on an individual firm's basis, does the price that they receive, is it correlated? So what you should actually check is the additional little bit that they get. So sorry, this is a bit tricky to explain. What you should be trying to do is to show that the value added, okay, so the amount of labor you have added, the surplus labor or you have added to the product is correlated to the extra piece of price that you get above the costs. So if we control for the labor costs and the constant capital cost, and you look at the little bit of extra price the person has made, so you've bought your corn, from your corn wholesaler, and now you're going to make your cornflakes. You have already existing machinery. You've got now on top of the machinery and all that in buildings, you've got labor costs, and then you have surplus labor, and you want to check, is that surplus labor correlated to the extra price you receive for your product above your costs? Okay, on a firm by firm basis. And if you had that information on a firm by firm basis, you would have the answer to who was right. You could say, well, look, we looked at each individual firm here and we did it, and we saw that, yes, the added labor, the surplus they have, explains the new bit of price they got. Or you might find, well, no, it's kind of random. Some people have added loads of extra labor, only added a little bit of extra price. Some have added, a huge price with little labor. Okay, so we would expect to see, personally, what I think would happen is you would see a lot of noise. And I think you would see surplus being siphoned from different places all over the place. Yeah, randomly within industry, across industry, we would see statistical noise, more than likely. Statistical noise with probably a negative statistical noise, because most sectors won't have massive, well, even within sectors they probably have massive rents, but some sectors probably have more rent extraction potential than others. So that's what I would say you would need. And what all that they've shown here is that we have, it's hard to even know what they've shown here, because when you control for the size of the sector, the correlations disappear. So I'm not going to get into that now because it's harder to describe. I might do one, and I haven't had time to reread the stuff so I can explain it as well. But like, even when you take the way using the aggregates, if you control the aggregates, the correlations for costs, we find that even at a sectoral level, there is no correlation. Like, I've worked in like statistical stuff. I was a data analyst and a, kind of data scientist, and a, for probably 8 or 9, I don't know how long actually, God, how long? Probably 7 or 8 years. And there was one time I got a high correlation, like they claim. They claim here in that it's like 97%. The variation, I think, in the way they put it, is the variation in value explains 97% of the variation in price. Okay, now I built a data mining model one time to predict, for a bank I was working for, when would people quit their accounts and close their accounts. So this was like, we're trying to see if we could do some, predictive stuff, and the bank could target customers or blah 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 blah. Boring. So I built this model. Stefan, this fellow I was working with, Gavin, built this model, and it took we spent about 6 months on this goddamn model, and we got it to predict with a 99% accuracy when somebody was going to close their account, right? And what we didn't know was that one of the variables that we had in our data set was mislabeled, and it actually was actually the variable saying they've actually closed their account. So we built a model that was predicting people would close their accounts because we had a spurious variable in there saying, oh, their account is already closed, or they just closed their account. So we were amazed. We got 99%. We could not believe this, and then like a few weeks later, we figured out that once we took that variable out, we had no predictive quality at all. Now, if I'm a data scientist and I see a 99% or 97%, like, Kleiman has done some statistical stuff here where they control for cost, and because they're using the TSSI formulations to do their calculations, they're slightly different. They actually get 99% correlation when they don't control for their costs. Like, if I ever got a 99 or 97% correlation, I would immediately think I've got wrong data in there, or I've done something wrong. I'd say even in the hard physical sciences, like, 99%, like, unless you've got incredible, like, measuring stuff, measurement, instruments and stuff like that. I know they can do some crazy stuff in theoretical physics now, but or not theoretical, but experimental physics. But I would, it should just ring alarm bells to anybody that you get a correlation like that, and something as dynamic and something as all over the place as a social structure like an economy, with supply and demand and crazy stuff going on all the time, with fundamentally with interest, rents, and monopolies, patents, terms of trade imbalances. It just beggars belief that you could think that such a correlation would be true once you actually get into the stats study what they're saying, hearing the counter arguments. There's just, this stuff does not hold up whatsoever. Cockshot has a one kind of complex argument that I think is too complicated to get into here without graphs about why the size thing doesn't matter. But we're going to create a video on this. I've been keep talking about these videos, but they are coming. And you know, this all of this statistical stuff, which I presumed was correct when I first heard of it, it sounded like, before I really understood the stuff, it sounded like, whoa, that's pretty cool. But in reality, when you dig into it, what it would show is that Ricardo was right and Marx was wrong. Fair enough, Ricardo could be right, Marx could be wrong. But like, it doesn't, like what they're showing doesn't show that. If we had more data, you could tell who exactly was correct. Are Cockshot and Scheich right that it's Ricardo, that values equals prices on the main, or is Marx correct that values and prices can be all over the place? Okay, because we've got so many things sucking, you know, this concept of prices of production, like this concept of certain areas being more profitable, capital moving into them, equating the rate, like that would not be a phenomena. Like we see that all the time. Like I was a professional poker player. I wish I went playing professional poker when I first started playing poker, because in the 2000s I could have made, you know, you did not have to be a very good player to make a ton of money playing poker. Now, different ball game altogether. The game's got harder, it's got more solved, but also the rate of profit. There was kids just making millions of dollars in their, you know, every year in their, you know, bedroom playing with a couple of laptops. And what did it attract? It attracted not so much capital, but it, you know, it probably did, but it attracted also just talent into the thing. And now the rate of profit for like the average, you know, online, you know, an online poker, there's no money in it anymore. None. You're better off playing live, you know. Getting your, like the way to make money in poker is kind of similar to how it used to be. You play live, you get a backer, he backs you in big games, you take a cut, you work your way up the ladder. That's the way it is. So like what we saw in the poker industry is the same as what we actually see in the real world. You know, this is, you know, has always been the case. You know, people hook into a new product and they get, you know, their first wit to like, or even a service, you know, like whatever the hell it is, and they get a premium. How many times you get these like you know, write-ups in like the New York Times magazine or the Guardian or something, and they talk about like, oh yeah, this is this new place you can go and get like a you know, a Martian massage or something, and it's like, it's so exclusive, blah blah blah, and it's like $200 an hour, and everybody's like, whoa. And then like what happens is, soon enough, like after about 5 years, there's a proliferation of these ones all over the place, and they drive the price down, and now it's just a simple commodity. And that's the same thing, you know, we see happening all the time. Nathan, have I explained that to your satisfaction at all? Let us know in the chat. We've got 6 here now. Who else do we have? Let yourselves be known. None of this sneaking in the background. I'm kind of all talked out there in this. Cockshot has one interesting argument on it, which is trying to have it both ways. And I must give it to Cockshot. He's well, some of his arguments are incredibly bad, but sometimes he comes up with a very good counter argument that's totally wrong, but like an impressive bad argument that you have to sit and think about it for a while, about what exactly is he saying here, and then you get the idea, and you go, all right, yeah, he's just muddying the waters there again. Oh dear. Anything else? What if else? Somebody was asking me. I was talking to a longtime follower of the show as well. Merlin goes by the name of Dr. Forbin. Uh, okay, Nathan's got some questions. Fire them in the chat there, and I'll see if I can deal with them as they come through. Yeah, Merlin was asking me, do I think? Okay. Okay, can you explain the price of production concept a bit more? So, price of production for Marx is literally your costs plus average cost plus average profit. Okay, so what's your cost? Your cost is going to be your constant. Let's have a look for the cost for the farmers. Our cost here is our machinery, raw materials, and our labor costs. Okay, that's our cost. Okay, but our average price of production, our average profit is the total surplus divided by the total capital in the sector. So it's going to be 300 over 600. So that's going to be a 50% profit rate. Okay, so it's going to be 50% on top of 200. So you're going to get 100%. You're going to get 100 profit. So it's going to be 300. Okay, now the value of your corn that you've grown in your field and you got picked and blah 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 is 380, but you're getting the average rate of profit. So it's your costs plus your average rate of profit, your raw materials, your machinery, your buildings, plus your wage costs and the average profit. Okay, that's all the cost of production. That's what your price of production is. And why does Marx bring in this concept in? It's like because and there's a quote somewhere deep in the bowels of Volume 2 about it, where Marx says something about the whole system would go would fall apart if you didn't have this. Think about it. What capitalist wants? There's a sugar factory, Tate and Lyle's sugar factory. I think it's the biggest sugary refinery in the world. It's only about a mile from my house here. Massive big thing on the docks. On the Thames, right? They don't have many workers working there. It's all high-tech machinery and stuff like that, right? If they were putting out 100 million of a machinery plant and they only had a few workers there and they were only creating value of, say, one extra surplus value of £1 million, why would they ever get into this business of getting a 1% profit with £100 million risk outlay? They would never do it. It just wouldn't happen. All these firms that have big factories, small numbers of people, any of the automakers, right? There's a Ford diesel engine plant another mile away from me here on the river, making all the diesel engines for Ford, I think, in Europe. Back in the day, there was probably like 10,000 working there. Now I think there's 500 or something like that. My neighbor works there, and it's like, if they had to lay out 100 million in that and more in Ireland, like where they have all the Dell chip manufacturing plants, some of them literally are $2 billion. There's a $2 billion plant and there's maybe like 400 people working in there. You got $2 billion and maybe a surplus value of like, 5 million quid. You're getting 2.5% return. No. These fuckers are going to be siphoning value from everybody else because they'll have a patent on their Pentiums or the Intel chips or whatever the hell they're building there. Yeah. And with that patent and just even with general like siphoning of value away from stuff, just by setting your prices, forget about even your patents and all that. Like, they're going to be siphoning. They won't do it. They will not invest that money if they're only getting the true rate of, the value rate of return, the actual surplus. They want more. They want to be getting 9, 10, 15% to justify that expenditure, to take that risk. And that's what happens all the time. So, like, there's no way in reality that, like obviously price of production aren't going to be exactly, not everybody's going to be getting exactly the price of production. That's not the real world. But there will be a tendency for capital to be drawn into places that have a high rate of profit, and the increased competition will drive it down. And in other places, it will go back up as there's not as much competition. And that's the general gist. But the system itself would collapse immediately. Marx says as much. The system would collapse if there wasn't this tendency towards price of production, average rate of profit. Fire another question in there to me if you want to, another one. But if there's any other ones, what do you call it? Yeah. So Dr. Forbin was asking me about, like, did I think there would be enough capital destruction in the current crisis to reboot capital? And honestly, I think capital are trying to prevent capital destruction as much as they can. I think they're trying to manage the prices of assets. They're clearly doing it. It's actually explicit federal policy to manage the buying junk bonds. They're doing all this kind of stuff. So they are actually managing the prices of these financial assets all over the place, and they don't want them to fall. So what does this mean? Like, say I'm a guy who's got like a load of debt from, say, like a cinema chain. I own, like, some bonds for Cineworld, or take your pick. Now they just, like, basically furloughed. They just shut down, I think, 500 cinemas in the States and 150 in Europe. It's going to be like, they're just going to sit there, right? Now, they're not bringing any income stream in. The buildings they own, it's going to cost them money to stop them falling into disrepair. Will they? Who knows? Maybe some of them they won't. They'll let fall into disrepair. There's going to be some capital destruction there. At least capital cost to keep them in their current position. More than likely capital destruction as well. Now, I owned that junk bond, Cineworld, back in April or blah, blah, blah. And the Fed came in and I wanted to sell it, and the Fed paid a certain price. They put a bottom on the floor to the market, and they would have paid me my good money. Yeah, not my good money, but they would have paid me my money that I invested, right? Even though that bond is going to be worth junk. So what is it going to mean? It's going to mean there's going to be a load of junk bonds sitting in the Federal Reserve Treasury, the Federal Reserve books, that'll never amount to much. But what it means in a kind of a geopolitical sense is that, like, people all around the world that has to use dollars, right? The US Fed is just printing up dollars, and they're giving them out essentially to the ruling class in America and saying, here, you're all right, here, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, right? And it generally means a siphoning of value away from other people around the world in the periphery. So we're going to see, like, this model of not allowing asset prices to fall and allow the system to cleanse itself, inevitably is leading to basically a government, scheme for the very rich Americans. And, the fact that they have this currency control, what did it go? Oh my God, my brain is fading. The reserve currency, this special privilege, they're abusing it, And I think at some stage, like, if the crises keep getting bigger and bigger, climate change, who knows what, destruction of capital, like, it gets to the point where they're printing so much money to maintain the worth of these, rich American investor types, that the rest of the world will rebel. And I think that's baked into the cake. They're not allowing any reset. And because I think they know that from the 1930s, like, if you allow big resets, the Wall Street crash, you get a large radicalization. Like, imagine what would happen, in America now in the coronavirus if all of these firms, all these investment houses went bust, if these banks that owned junk bonds and owned these collateralized debt loan obligations, CDLOs, I think, or whatever they're called, and all of the major banks went bust, like what happened to a lot of the major banks in the 30s. Imagine a whole load of layman's all just like scattered, just like fucking all go in one go. There'll be absolute fucking mayhem for about 10 years. And who knows where the chips would lie. So I think they're locked into this, not allowing any managing asset prices, managing house prices, these assets. And it's going to inevitably lead to the end, I think, of the dollar system. Either that and Trump's drug intake. Did anybody see the greatest thing that Trump has ever said, I think, the funniest thing he's ever said was the other day in his speech when he came out and he said, great drugs. Who knows? Maybe I'm immune. Oh man, that made me laugh so fucking hard. Like the guy has just got the disease, he's just got it, and he's on drugs for the symptoms. And he's goddamn saying, maybe I'm immune. Like, I don't think he has any who knows? Like, who knows? I don't think he has any understanding of even what the concept of immunity is. Oh my God. Just fucking unbelievable. Right, Nathan, any other questions there? Anybody else? Because I know there's 6 people in here now. Wow, a whopping great 6. We got Corey. We've had one of them was probably me too. So we probably have 5. And Nathan, if anybody else is listening, give a shout in the chat and I'll give you a shout out. I'll probably go off. If nobody has any more questions, I'll go off. We're on for about 54 minutes. My mouth is getting dry. I've had a strange day buying my first car. A deep malaise has put me into. Yeah, very strange. Yeah. I'm going to pick it up on Monday morning. God damn it. Getting insurance is so bizarre. I went on one site, it offered me £750 for my insurance. And then I went and put the details in again, 2 hours later, exactly the same, to try and buy it. It offered me 1,100 quid. I went over to a different site and I put it in and I ended up getting it for 700 quid again. Totally bizarre. Maybe the market is immune. Yeah. Stephen, how's it going? Stephen CM. Steve, have you got any questions or anything you want me to say before we go? Maybe I'm immune. It's the goddamn, it is the greatest. It is the greatest quote Donald Trump is. He said a lot of idiotic things in his time. He's a funny bastard, but maybe I'm immune. It is the worst I've ever heard. Any other kind of, I don't know if there's any. Yeah, Steve's came in late, so not sure what I covered. Yeah, I've been covering. Okay, so this is a question from Nathan. Okay, I'm reading him now, and he points out how the value doesn't equal price stuff. Means that measuring the rate of profit like Michael Roberts doesn't really work. Okay, I can't remember exactly how Michael Roberts measures his rate of profit, but what the problem with measuring the rate of profit from the statistics is that you can't get an exact measure like Marx says. So Marx says you want to be able to compare your constant capital with your variable capital and your surplus value. Now, the problem is that when, say for example, that's the best way to explain this. Usually, a firm will have, say, an outlay for machinery, okay, and then they'll have an outlay for labor. And the labor cost might be, say, £1 million throughout the calendar year. They pay for 12 times. They pay like £80,000 12 times, so £960,000 pounds over the entire year. But what's happening an awful lot of the time is that the capitalist has with the stuff they've produced in the first month, they sell it, and they'll be able to use the profit and the proceeds of their sales to pay for the wages of the next month. So while it looks like they have £1 million of wages over the entire year, because there's a constant circulating of productive, so they make their shoes, they sell their shoes, with the money that come back from the shoes, they hire the workers the next time. That while in reality they pay out £1 million in labor or in wages to the shoemakers, they really only needed maybe 200,000 at the start to cover them for the first couple of months before they start getting their revenues back in. So when you get to trying to measure the exact Marxist rate of profit, you end up with problems, because certain firms have very short turnover times, like a restaurant. Okay, they're turning it over every fucking day. Yeah, it's just like every few minutes that the stuff is coming in to pay back for the staff that they've just worked that hour. It's flying. Then you have, like, say, maybe a car manufacturer where maybe it takes a day or 5 days to make a car, right? It gets to go to the market, they sell it to a dealer or something, and maybe it takes 2 weeks. Probably takes a lot more than that. Then you've got like somebody who's making a cruise liner, who's building a shipbuilder. They could be building it for 2 or 3 years, a massive ship, right? They need all of that outlay up front for their wages. So what they tend to do, the Marxist economists, I'm not exactly sure what way Michael Roberts is doing it, but what they tend to do is on the bottom, instead of having the fixed capital and your constant capital cost and your wages cost, they only put in the constant capital, okay? Because the other one is just too messy. It could lead to very spurious results. Now, I think there are starting to be people who are, or it could, all of this depends on the data. Sorry, there's my phone. The data that let me turn off my phone. The data that the how they collect the data for like these accounts. Maybe they have it. Maybe they just don't release it. Maybe they don't have it. If they had it, just like we were talking about earlier, if you what would be needed to show if Marx or Ricardo was right, if values do equal prices, or if they're all over the shop, like Marx would say. If you had the data, you could get a perfect Marxist rate of profit. An actual, you could try and calculate it, but at the moment, I don't think that data is out there. Oh, Nathan, what was this one? Okay, you have one more. I think it's more of a data issue with measuring the. I don't know the exact Matic Junior critique, so I'd have to read it. As far as I know, he's not a TSSI guy. He's kind of basically a kind of a simultaneist, Sandra would call him, or basically how Marx collapses into Schraffer view, I think. So I don't know exactly the argument. You'd have to send it to me, and maybe I'll do it on the next live stream. Okay, my voice is going, so I'm going to head off. Yeah, I haven't been doing as many because I was on holidays there and I got really snowed under with kind of real world trying to get stuff done. I didn't get as many Patreon only episodes out. There was like about two missing. So I'm going to do these every week for a while to try and make up for the patrons. And I like a bit of my programming work is probably dried up for the next few months. So I'm going to be doing probably a lot of podcasts and stuff in the next while. So the patrons will be seeing a lot of me, hopefully. And I have a few. I'm going to try and bring out maybe some T-shirts or something like that. Maybe people have asked me to do some of that. If you have any ideas about like funky ass T-shirts you'd like to see, or any ideas for me at all, because I don't know. Just let me know. Goddamn! I still from this time last year. There's still one person I owe a free badge to for signing up, because when COVID came in, it was like when COVID came in, all the post offices in my locality were kind of shut, and they only left one kind of central one open, and it was a fucking like an hour or 2 hour wait in the middle of the height of the COVID, and so that put me off about 3 months. And then I was in Ireland for about 3 months, and I didn't. I got them all done apart from one before I left, so I still have one person to send to. I've got another one to do tomorrow, so I'll do them tomorrow. So in case anybody's listening and thinking Tom's a useless bastard, which I am. Okay, I'm going offline. Thanks everybody, and I'll put this up on the YouTube channel. Well, you can all see this, but I'll put up on the YouTube in a few days. For the plebs. Good luck.